Let's get more on these trends. I'm joined by Philippe Le Corre, a visiting fellow at the Brookings Institute, a think tank here in Washington, D.C. He's also the co-author of the book, The Chinese Offensive in Europe. Philippe, thank you for being on the program.
Thank you, Essie.
Let's begin with China's slowing economy. How much has that contributed to Chinese investors wanting to diversify overseas, and why Europe?
I think it's a strategic decision from the Chinese government to invest overseas. It's been decided many years ago now, I mean, five years ago perhaps, and Europe is interesting in many ways. First of all, it's got infrastructures that some of them need to be renewed. Secondly, there are many brands, and the Chinese are very interested in getting brands, and there have been some examples of successful takeovers by Chinese companies. Volvo, for example, the car company that was acquired by a Chinese group. And also Europe, has its difficulties, economic difficulties, and the debt crisis of 2008 was perhaps the start of these difficulties. And the door started to open more widely to outside investors. And China, sort of came and knocked on the door, especially of the Greek government, or perhaps was called by the Greek government. I'm not sure which way it started, but in any case, Greece was an interesting case and still interesting. You referred to it in your introduction. But there are also many other countries. Almost every country in Europe is now a recipient of foreign investment.
And I want to talk about Greece in just a second. But you recently wrote that China's future investment in Europe will probably center on 3 trends. Explain those trends to us.
Well, the first trend is to do with brands, and
as you already mentioned.
Yeah, I already mentioned. That's basically building brands outside of China and then bringing them back into China. And because the Chinese consumers, need to have some reference. And the fact that these brands are actually developing in Europe, and if they have Chinese owners, even better. And then, go back to China and become household names in China. That will be of help.
So brands, one of them.
Brands is one of them. The other sector, of course, to mention is energy and transport. Everything to do with infrastructures, really. I mean, China has invested financially in many gas and utilities companies. And of course, strategically, it's important. China has invested in Africa, for example, to fuel the economic engine, which may be slowing down, but still, moving relatively fast compared to other parts of the world.
So brand, energy.
Energy. And the third one, perhaps, is to do with the European investment package that the European Commission new president has announced, which is 300 billion euro. And whether China will take a share of this will be really interesting, because that means a long-term investment for China in Europe.
What are the risks here for Chinese investors and benefits, really, for Europe's battered economy, which you mentioned?
Well, obviously, China, is a huge market. China has $4,000 billion of foreign reserves. Not many countries can boast such a number. And China is willing to engage with the rest of the world, including the United States, the Western world. Europe can serve as a pattern for many of these investments. Now, the problem, of course, is the cross-cultural relationship is not very easy. The management side, that's where things sometimes don't work in this sort of Chinese-owned Western companies with shareholders. But, I think there are risks for everyone. Europe needs Chinese investors. Europe needs to understand China better.
Well, hold that thought, because I don't want to. We were running out of time. Let's talk about Greece. Speaking of needing one another, do you believe, because of Greece's financial issues and colossal debt and all these negotiations going on with EU finance minister, could that endanger the relationship it has with China?
This was announced 3 days after the election of the new left-wing government in Greece. And obviously, Beijing reacted strongly and not very happily, obviously. But I believe on the long run, the two terminals that have been in the Athens harbor that have been managed by China, by COSCO, a Chinese shipping giant, have been rather well managed and have been quite successful. Now, privatizing the whole of the harbor of Athens, in addition to some links and an airport and things like that, creating in effect a Chinese hub in Europe. That may not be that go as fast,
especially with the new government in place,
as China was expecting. So I think it's going to be a step-by-step process, and I believe on the long run, this investment will continue.
All right, Philippe Le Corre, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much.